Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really intense part of the scriptures, Jeremiah chapter 38. We're going to try and unpack the key moments, the tough calls, and some pretty surprising stuff that happens in these verses. Let's just get into it.
Okay, so the scene is set in Jerusalem, right? The city's under huge pressure, facing a siege, and smack in the middle of all this chaos, you've got the prophet Jeremiah, and he's delivering this message that is, well, let's just say it's not going down well. Deeply unpopular, dangerously so.
Okay, so what exactly is he saying? What's the message that's causing all this trouble? Because it feels like his words really kick everything off here.
Yeah, he says this message comes straight from the Lord, and it's pretty stark, especially for people trying to, defend their city.
Yeah.
He tells anyone who stays inside Jerusalem, you're going to die. Sword, famine, plague, horrible ways out. But then he offers another way. He says, look, if you go over to the Babylonians, if you defect,
Yeah.
you'll live. You'll actually escape with your life.
Wow. Survive by surrendering. I mean, in a city under siege, that must sound like outright treason to a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. It goes against everything, right? Fighting to the last man, defending your home. And Jeremiah doubles down. He says the city will be handed over. It will be captured. Like, from his point of view, it's a done deal. Fighting from inside the walls, that's just futile and deadly.
Futile and deadly. Okay, yeah, you can see immediately how that would cause. Friction doesn't even seem strong enough. Conflict. So how do the officials react? The important guys, Sheptai, Gedaliah, Jehukal, Pashur, what do they do when they hear this?
They are furious and alarmed. They go right to the talk, straight to King Zedekiah. And what's really interesting is they don't really argue about whether Jeremiah is right, whether the prophecy is true. Their whole focus is on the effect his words are having, on morale, on the soldiers.
So they're seeing it not just as, like, bad news, but actively damaging, actively harmful.
Exactly. They literally tell the king, this man should be put to death. That's what they demand. And their reason. He's discouraging the soldiers as well as all the people.
Yeah.
They basically frame his message as trying to bring ruin, not good, for these people. It's a total flip of Jeremiah's intent, a political spin.
Ruin, not good. Yeah, that's completely twisting it. And they're asking for the death penalty.
Yeah.
So King Zedekiah, he's the one in charge, supposedly. How does he handle this pressure from his officials?
This is a really telling moment about Zedekiah, maybe his weakness, maybe just how cornered he felt. He doesn't stand up for Jeremiah, doesn't argue. He just says, he is in your hands. And then adds, the king can do nothing to oppose you. He basically just washes his hands of it, gives them the green light.
Wow, okay. Just completely abdicate. So what do the officials do now they have the king's permission, especially since they wanted him dead?
They don't waste any time. They grab Jeremiah and they take him and put him down into a cistern. The text is specific. It belongs to Malchijah, the king's son.
Yeah.
And it's in the courtyard of the guard.
How'd they get him down there?
Lowered him with ropes. And here's the crucial detail. The cistern wasn't, like, full of water for drinking. No, it was empty. Well, empty of water, just had mud at the bottom. The description is just Jeremiah sank down into the mud. Imagine that. Trapped, sinking in mire.
Ugh. Sinking into mud at the bottom of a pit, that's a horrifying image. And the text makes it clear later just how deadly being left there was, right? It wasn't just uncomfortable.
Exactly. Someone points it out later, Ebed-Melech. With the siege going on, food, especially bread, was running out fast in the city. So leaving Jeremiah in that cistern, it was basically a death sentence by starvation once the city supplies were gone. It looked like the end for him.
But then things take a turn.
Yeah.
Someone steps up, someone unexpected, not part of that group who threw him in. Ebed-Melech, tell us about him.
Right, Ebed-Melech. The text calls him a Cushite, probably Ethiopian or Nubian, and he's an official in the palace. He wasn't one of the big names demanding Jeremiah's death, but he hears what happened, that Jeremiah's in the cistern.
And he decides to act. Which must have taken some serious guts, right? He's going against these powerful officials.
Absolutely, huge courage. He goes straight to the king, finds Zedekiah sitting at the Benjamin Gate, probably a public spot, doing official business. Ebed-Melech leaves the palace, walks right up to him there.
Okay. And what does he say? How does he make his case?
He doesn't mince words. He says, "My lord the king, these men have acted wickedly." He calls it out directly. Wicked.
Strong language.
Very. In all they have done to Jeremiah the prophet. And then he lays out the consequence. They have thrown him into a cistern where he will starve to death when there's no longer any bread in the city. He connects the dots. Their action leads directly to Jeremiah's death because of the famine.
He highlights the injustice and the immediate danger. So how does Zedekiah react this time? I mean, just a bit earlier you said he couldn't oppose those same men.
Yeah, it's a definite shift. Maybe it was Ebed-Melech's boldness, maybe the public setting, maybe just a flicker of conscience, who knows. But this time, the king acts. He gives a direct order. Take 30 men and lift Jeremiah the prophet out of the cistern before he dies.
Before he dies. It's urgent.
Yes. And 30 men, that suggests it wasn't a simple task. Maybe the cistern was deep, maybe Jeremiah was really stuck, or maybe the king just wanted to make sure it got done. No interference.
So Ebed-Melech gets the go-ahead and the manpower. How does the rescue actually happen?
He gathers the men, then he goes to the specific room in the palace under the treasury, and here's where you see his, practical kindness. He gets old rags and worn-out clothes.
Rags? That seems odd. Why rags?
Well, think about it. He lowers the rags down with the ropes, and he tells Jeremiah, put these rags under your arms to pad the ropes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So thoughtful, right? Pulling someone straight up with ropes, especially if they're weak or stuck in mud, could really hurt them, cut into their skin. The padding protects him. It shows Ebed-Melech isn't just, ticking a box. He's doing it carefully, humanely.
That detail really brings it to life. Such a small thing, but so important.
Yeah.
Did Jeremiah manage?
Yep. The text says Jeremiah did just as Ebed-Melech told him. They put the padding under his arms, then they pulled him up with the ropes, lifted him right out.
Out of the mud, out of that awful situation. Where did they take him then? Was he free?
Not exactly free. The account says he remained in the courtyard of the guard. So still confined, basically under house arrest, but definitely safer than the bottom of a muddy cistern.
Okay, so his situation is better, but he's still right there close to the palace. And that proximity seems key because the king wants to talk to him again, doesn't he? This time, though, it's secret.
Right. Zedekiah sends for him again, brings him to a more private place, the third entrance to the temple. And the king is very clear. I'm going to ask you something. Do not hide anything from me. He wants the unvarnished truth in private.
Now, Jeremiah's just been pulled from a death trap that the king initially allowed.
Yeah.
How does he react to this demand for total honesty now? Is he wary?
Understandably, yes. Very cautious. He puts two questions back to the king, and they reveal everything, really. First, if I tell you the truth, won't you kill me? He knows the message is dangerous. He's just experienced how dangerous. And second, hinting at their past dealings. Even if I give you counsel, you won't listen anyway.
Oof. Yeah, we've been here before. You ask, I tell you, you ignore me, and I get in trouble.
Exactly. It shows a pattern. The king seeks advice but doesn't follow through.
So how does Zedekiah try and reassure him this time? To get him to actually speak freely?
He tries to build trust with the secret oath. Very solemn one. He swears, by the Lord who has given us breath. That's pretty serious, that he won't kill Jeremiah himself, and he won't hand him over to those officials who tried to kill him before. It's a personal, secret guarantee from the king, aimed right at Jeremiah's specific fears.
Okay, so a secret oath from the king himself. That seems to do the trick. Jeremiah agrees to speak. What's the message this time? Is it any different?
Nope, it's the same core message, fundamentally. He prefaces it again, saying this comes from the Lord God Almighty, the God of Israel. And he lays out the two paths again, two outcomes, all hinging on the king's choice.
And path number one, the one Jeremiah's been pushing for.
Surrender. If King Zedekiah goes out and surrenders to the Babylonian officers, the outcome is good. Zedekiah lives, the city is not burned, he and his family survive. So surrender equals preservation for him, his family, the city itself.
Okay, and the alternative? Path two, if he refuses to surrender.
Then, disaster. Total and unavoidable. The city will be handed over, it will be burned down, and Zedekiah himself, he won't escape. He'll be captured by the Babylonians. Simple as that.
So surrender means life. Resistance means destruction and capture. It seems incredibly clear. Yet, what's Zedekiah's hang-up here? What's his fear, even in this private moment?
This is really fascinating. His biggest stated fear isn't actually the Babylonians themselves. It's the Jews who've gone over to the Babylonians, the defectors, his own people who switched sides.
Wait, he's afraid of them. Why?
He's terrified the Babylonians might hand him, the king, over to them, the Jewish defectors, and that they would mistreat him, mock him, torture him maybe. His fear seems rooted in this deep dread of personal humiliation and suffering at the hands of his former subjects, now allied with the enemy.
That adds a whole other layer, doesn't it? Fear of shame from his own people might be stronger than the fear of the conquerors. How does Jeremiah respond to that specific fear?
Jeremiah just shuts it down directly. They will not hand you over, full stop. He basically says, that specific thing you're afraid of, don't worry about it. And then he immediately pivots back to the main point. Obey the Lord, then it will go well with you, and your life will be spared. He ties the king's safety directly to surrender. Again, one last plea.
But he doesn't stop there, does he? He then paints an even more vivid, really brutal picture of what happens if Zedekiah still refuses. He gets very specific about the consequences, even for the royal family.
Oh, yeah. He spells out exactly what the Lord revealed will happen upon refusal, and it's designed to hit hard. Deeply humiliating. First, he says all the women left in the palace, probably the royal wives, concubines, they'll be dragged out and paraded before the Babylonian officials.
Paraded before the enemy officials.
Yes, and worse, these women will taunt Zedekiah. They'll mock him. And the words Jeremiah says they'll use are incredibly cutting, psychologically sharp. They misled you and overcame you, those trusted friends of yours. And then this line, your feet are sunk in the mud. Your friends have deserted you.
Your feet are sunk in the mud. Wow, that sounds chillingly familiar, like Jeremiah's own experience in the cistern.
Exactly. It's this powerful echo, isn't it? It suggests Zedekiah, by listening to these trusted friends, these officials, has put himself in a situation just as hopeless and stuck as Jeremiah was physically in that mud pit. His advisors misled him, and now, when he's stuck, they've abandoned him. Metaphorically sunk.
That's potent imagery.
Yeah.
And the prophecy doesn't end with the taunt, right? There's more bad news if he refuses.
There is. It gets worse. All his wives and his children will also be brought out to the Babylonians. Complete family disgrace and loss. And then, the final confirmation of his own fate. You yourself will not escape. Captured by the king of Babylon, and this city will be burned down. Refusal means public humiliation via the women, loss of his family, his own capture, and the city destroyed by fire. The choice, surrender or total ruin, couldn't be laid out more starkly.
Okay, so after hearing this incredibly detailed, devastating prophecy, Zedekiah's very next thought is about keeping it quiet.
Exactly that. His immediate concern shifts back to secrecy. He tells Jeremiah urgently, don't let anyone know we had this conversation or you might die. Even with the king's oath, the danger from those officials is still very real if they find out Jeremiah was advising surrender behind their backs.
And the king is so worried about this leak that he actually gives Jeremiah a pre-planned alibi, a cover story.
He does. He coaches him exactly what to say if those officials do ask questions, anticipating they might even threaten Jeremiah's life to get answers. The story is, I was pleading with the king not to send me back to Jonathan's house to die there.
Jonathan's house.
Yeah.
So that implies it was another place Jeremiah had been imprisoned before, probably a nasty one, making it sound like he just wanted a personal favor from the king, not giving political advice.
Precisely. It's a believable excuse. It gives Jeremiah a non-political, purely personal reason for seeking a private audience with the king. It protects the real substance of their talk, and hopefully protects Jeremiah.
And just like Zedekiah foresaw, the officials did come calling. They questioned Jeremiah.
They did. The text confirms they showed up, asked him what was said, probably making threats just like the king guessed.
And Jeremiah stuck to the script.
He did. It says Jeremiah told them everything the king had ordered him to say. The cover story about Jonathan's house.
Did it work? Did they buy it?
It seems so. The text says the officials said no more to him. They backed off. And it adds the crucial detail. Because no one else had heard his conversation with the king, secrecy held, Jeremiah was, for the moment, safe from that immediate threat.
So quite a roller coaster in this chapter. Prophecy, thrown in the mud, rescued, secret meeting with the king, near disaster averted with a cover story. Where does this chapter leave Jeremiah in the end?
It wraps up by saying he remained right there, in the courtyard of the guard, confined, until the day Jerusalem was finally captured. So, better off than the cistern, for sure, but still under guard, waiting for the inevitable outcome he'd foretold.
Right, so this deep dive into Jeremiah 38, it's really shown us a prophet facing extreme danger for his message, an unexpected hero in Ebed-Melech, a king trapped by fear and indecision, and this whole layer of secrecy and political maneuvering.
Yeah, you really see that tension, don't you? Between this divine warning that nobody wants to hear and the practical politics of a desperate situation. You see the power of fear, how it can paralyze a leader like Zedekiah. But you also see these moments of incredible, quiet courage, like Ebed-Melech just doing the decent thing. And the consequences, right? The huge weight of the choices people make or fail to make.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About how we react today when we hear difficult truths, things we don't want to face. And what does it really take to be like Ebed-Melech, to act on principle in tough situations?
Yeah. You've got the prophet suffering for the truth, the king unable to act because of fear, the official who just quietly does what's right. What does that whole dynamic tell you, listening now, about hearing unwelcome news, about facing reality versus keeping up appearances, and maybe about the kind of courage it takes, not always loud, but just doing the right thing when someone's in peril? Definitely something to reflect on.